I joined the company at 21, not through connections, not through family. I walked in with a degree that meant nothing yet, and a last name that meant too much. My father was one of the founders. By the time I was hired, he had remarried my stepmother. Polished smile, soft voice, eyes that never missed anything. She never openly hated me. She didn't need to. Every decision she made slowly pushed me into invisible corners. I started in operations. Long hours. Low pay. I was always the first in, last out. When systems failed, I fixed them. When clients threatened to walk, I stayed until they calmed down. People got promoted above me. I trained them. I smiled. My father used to say, "Loyalty builds things no money can." I believed him. For 18 years, I built quietly. Workflows, processes, vendor relationships, crisis plans that never made headlines because they worked. When my father died, everything changed. The funeral was still fresh when she called the first board meeting without me. My title didn't change. My access did. Emails I used to receive stopped coming. Meetings were rescheduled without notice. Decisions I used to make were reviewed by people half my experience. She called it modernization. I called it erasure. Then HR started requesting reports I had never been asked for before. Daily logs, time breakdowns, justification for roles I had created myself. I felt it coming. When you survive that long, you recognize the weather before the storm. The day they called me in, her lawyer was already sitting there. Clean suit, neutral tone, a folder with my name printed too big. They said the word restructuring 5 times. They said voluntary resignation, like it was a favor. They said if I signed that day, they would take care of me. My stepmother did not look at me. She stared at the table, as if I were a bad number she didn't want to acknowledge. 18 years, reduced to 4 pages, and a pen slid across the table. I asked for time. The lawyer said, "This offer won't stand." So I signed, not because I was broken, not because I was afraid, but because I knew exactly what I had built, and I knew what they did not understand. When I walked out of that building for the last time, no one clapped. No one stopped me. Security didn't even look up. They thought it was over. They were wrong. The first week after I left was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up early out of habit, made coffee, and sat staring at a phone that did not ring. 18 years of urgency does not fade in a day. I kept thinking about the systems I had left behind, not with panic, but with clarity. I knew which parts were self-sustaining and which parts only worked because I was there to interpret them. I had designed it that way after a crisis years ago, when a consultant tried to replicate my work and failed. That was when I made sure the knowledge lived with me, documented but never detached. By the end of week 2, the first problem hit them, a minor one on paper, a report that did not balance, a supplier payment that misfired. They fixed it with patch and moved on. By week 3, patches stacked. Small delays turned into missed deadlines. Clients started asking questions, the kind that sound polite but carry exit plans. Still, no one called me. Pride is expensive when it wears a suit. Then one morning, I got an email from a man I had trained 10 years earlier. Subject line, quick question. The body was one sentence. Do you remember how the fallback logic works on the core pipeline? I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed my laptop. That was the moment I knew they were hurting. 2 days later, it was the lawyer. Different tone now, less confident. He said there were some ownership questions regarding internal frameworks. He said they needed access. I said I was happy to discuss licensing. He paused, said that won't be necessary. I said, then neither will my help. An hour later, my stepmother called. First time she had spoken to me directly since the resignation. She said my name like it still belonged to her. Said we were family. Said my father would have wanted me to cooperate. I let her finish. Then I said something I had never said to her before. You made me resign. You did not buy me. Silence. Then she said they would see me in court. I said, I look forward to it. What their lawyer never asked for and never noticed was my original employment agreement from 18 years ago. The one signed during a panic, when the company was bleeding and my father needed me more than he needed control. That contract had a clause, a small one, about intellectual structures created without separate assignment. It did not sound important, until it was everything. When their lawsuit arrived, rushed and careless, my response was calm and documented. Timelines, version histories, emails, proof that the company ran on systems they did not own. The judge read. The court paused their use of my work pending resolution. Operations slowed overnight. Shareholders asked questions. The board turned on her in private. And for the first time since my father died, I slept without weight on my chest. By the time the injunction hit, the company was already bleeding just quietly. Clients were not leaving in a storm. They were drifting, one by one, the most dangerous kind of loss. Internal teams were confused. Managers argued over who had authority to change what. Every meeting ended with action items no one knew how to execute. I heard all of this from people who still called me after hours, voices low, asking questions they were afraid to put in emails. I did not gloat. I listened. I answered nothing. The board hired a major consulting firm. They paid millions for slides that said what I had been saying for years. The consultants asked for documentation. They were given files without context. They built models that collapsed under real use. Time passed. Revenue slipped. The lawyer called again, this time with formality gone. He said they were open to discussion. I said discussion is cheap, licensing is not. He asked what I wanted. I said I wanted what was fair when I was invisible, not now that I was inconvenient. He did not like that answer. Discovery opened everything. Internal messages, board notes, private calendar invites. There was, in black and white, a plan to push me out before my long-term benefits vested. A note from her saying I was too entrenched, too hard to control. The room shifted when that hit the record. The judge asked questions that no one could spin. Their legal strategy collapsed under its own speed. Settlement talks started again. This time, I set the agenda. I did not ask for revenge. I asked for recognition. Full benefit vesting. Back pay. Interest. A license fee that reflected 18 years of unpaid value. A public statement restoring my role in the company history. And a non-interference clause for the rest of my career. They said it was impossible. 3 weeks later, they signed. My stepmother did not speak during the final meeting. She looked smaller, not weaker, just exposed. Power does that when it loses its story. When I walked out of that building again, this time on my terms, the security guard nodded. Small things matter at the end. The money hit my account on a Tuesday morning. No confetti, no call, just numbers settling where they should have been years ago. But money was never the part that healed me. What healed me was a statement they released that afternoon. A clean, carefully worded announcement acknowledging my contributions to the core operational frameworks of the company. My name, printed without discount. For 18 years, I had been present but unseen. Now the record could not be erased. The board held an emergency session 2 weeks later. I did not attend. I did not need to. She stepped down as chair under the word strategic transition. People who had once avoided my eyes sent messages that said, I always knew. I did not respond to those either. Loyalty that speaks only after safety is not loyalty. I took a position with a different company. No family, no history, just respect and clear terms. On my first day, they asked me what I needed to succeed. I almost laughed. I'd built again, but different this time. Everything documented, everything valued, nothing given away for free. Sometimes at night, I think about the kid who walked into that company at 21, believing hard work would protect him. He was not wrong. He was just early. The biggest mistake they made was not forcing me out. It was teaching me exactly how power works when you stop asking for permission. The night before the final hearing, I did not sleep, not from fear, but from memory. Every late night, I had stayed when others went home. Every weekend, I answered calls while my life waited in another room. And then I realized I had not been weak. I had been patient. And patience is a power that does not need to be understood to be effective. I saw her one last time at a distance. A corporate event. Different logo. Different room. Same posture. She did not see me. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. It did not matter. By then, I no longer needed her to acknowledge anything. The company I joined grew fast. Not because of secrets, but because I built systems that respected people, not just numbers. I promoted quiet workers. I credited teams publicly. I never used the word family in a contract. Sometimes people ask me if I regret staying 18 years in a place that tried to erase me. I tell them no, because I left with something more valuable than a title. I left with proof. Proof that loyalty is not silence. Proof that power does not come from position, but from understanding what you actually own. Sometimes revenge is not watching someone fall. It is watching yourself rise without apology. I did not take their future. I took back my own. I am no longer the man who hoped to be seen. I am the man who knows his value, even if the room pretends not to. My stepmother lost control the day she thought paper could replace a person. Their lawyer lost the case the moment he stopped asking questions and started making assumptions. And I won the day I stopped asking for permission to exist with power. After everything was done, after the papers were signed and the noise died down, the real weight finally arrived. Not relief, not happiness, grief. I grieved a version of my life that never got to exist. The version where loyalty was returned, where family meant protection, where 18 years brought safety instead of silence. People do not talk enough about this part. The part where you win, but still more what you thought you were building. I sat alone some nights asking myself if I would have done anything differently if I had known how it would end. The answer hurt. I would have still given my best. Not for them, but because that is who I am. I used to think strength meant endurance. Staying, taking it, waiting it out. Now I know better. Strength is knowing when endurance turns into self-erasure. For years, I shrank myself to keep the peace. I avoided confrontation. I let credit slide. I told myself it was temporary. It never is. People who benefit from your silence will never tell you to speak. My stepmother did not destroy me in one move. She did it in increments. And I let her, because I believed love and fairness were automatic. They are not. They are decisions. There is a moment after betrayal when you must decide what story you will tell yourself. Either you were a fool or you were a good person in a bad system. It took me time to choose the second without shame. I was not stupid for trusting. I was human. They were not smart for using me. They were short-sighted. Everything they built on my back collapsed the moment I stood up straight. That is the irony of control. It creates dependence, then panics when the source walks away. I see people like my old self all the time now. Quiet, reliable, invisible, carrying more than anyone knows. I tell them the truth they never heard. Document your work. Protect your mind. Do not wait for gratitude to save you. And most of all, do not let anyone make you feel guilty for knowing your value. The world does not reward sacrifice. It rewards leverage. Learn the difference before it learns it for you. This story is not about a stepmother, or a lawyer, or a company. It is about what happens when a person stops believing they must earn the right to be treated fairly. I lost a job. I lost an identity. I lost a family I thought I had. But I gained something stronger than all of it. Self-respect without conditions. If you're listening to this and you feel overworked, undervisible, quietly disposable, hear this clearly. You are not weak. You are loaded. And one day, when you walk away, they will finally understand what you were carrying. I found a letter my father never sent. It was written years ago, warning me about people who would try to take what I built. He said he trusted me more than anyone else, that I was the only one who knew how everything fit together, and that if anyone ever tried to take my work without my consent, I should stand my ground. I read it 3 times. Not angry, not vindicated, just tired in a way that felt final. That letter silenced every doubt. I did not need her respect. I did not need the board's praise. The person who built that company with me had seen me clearly, and that was a noog. I learned something greater than revenge. True power does not come from fighting someone. True power comes from walking away with your value untouched, your principles intact, and your future unassigned to anyone else. I built again, better, wiser, without seeking approval. My stepmother and their lawyer were trapped in the consequences of their own short-sightedness. And I walked into my next chapter lighter than I had ever been, stronger than I had ever known, with a quiet certainty that nothing they could ever do would take back who I am or what I had earned through 18 years of silent, relentless dedication. Sometimes, the hardest part of revenge is watching the people who hurt you struggle without your interference. I did not need to push them down. Their own decisions, their own arrogance, did it for them. Board meetings turned chaos. Reports failed. Clients called with questions no one could answer. They looked around, hunting for me, searching for the person they assumed they could control. But I was gone. Not angry, not even vindictive. Just absent. And that absence spoke louder than any yell, any email, any threat. The lawyer who had advised speed instead of precision watched the strategy collapse. She watched the control melt like ice. And I learned something in that silence. Power does not belong to those who think they can take it. Power belongs to those who know their value, who hold it quietly, and who walk away when necessary. Every night after, I reflected on my own journey. The young man who had walked into that building at 21, full of hope, trusting too much, learning too slowly, was still there somewhere inside me. But he had grown. The silent hours, the late-night calls, the injustice, had shaped him into someone who knew that value does not need to be seen to be real. I did not need apology. I did not need gratitude. I needed only to walk straight and hold my head high. And that is what I did. My former colleagues who had once ignored me began calling again. Some apologized. Some asked for advice. Some simply wanted to know how I did it. I told them only this. Observe. Document. Protect your mind. Never let silence be mistaken for weakness. And never underestimate the person who walks away calmly. They paused. Some did not understand until years later. That is how power works. My stepmother never recovered from the setback. She tried. She tried to rebuild. But she did not understand that control is not given. Control is earned. She had spent 18 years thinking that silence and loyalty were weaknesses. Instead, they were my weapons. The biggest mistake she ever made was thinking I could be pushed without consequence. Sometimes I think about the moments I could have shouted, cried, gone to court immediately. I did not. I learned that silence carries weight, that observation is strategy, and that time is the most dangerous weapon if you know how to use it. Every move they made against me only built the foundation of the victory I would claim years later. The courtrooms, the lawyers, the email threads, the board meetings, they all faded into memory. What remained was what I built after. A new life, a new company, a new network of respect. I no longer chase acknowledgement. I created structures that spoke for themselves. People who had once doubted me now asked for guidance. And I gave it, not to control, not to prove, but because this time I decided how my loyalty was used. The quiet revenge was the sweetest. They did not lose because I took from them. They lost because they could not function without me. Clients questioned decisions. Systems failed. Managers argue over tasks they did not understand. I observed from afar, calm, patient, silent. No gloating. No celebration. Just a quiet certainty that everything they had built on my back collapsed the moment I left. I remember the letter my father never sent. His words warmed me even years later. He trusted me more than anyone. He knew who I was. He knew what I could handle. And he knew that if someone tried to take my work, I would stand my ground. I read it again after settlement. Not with joy, not with anger, but with final understanding. I had not been alone. His faith had been my silent strength. The final lesson hit hard. Revenge is not about hurting others. It is about living fully after they try to erase you. It is about knowing your value. It is about holding principles strong when chaos surrounds you. It is about walking away and letting consequences take their course. They did not erase me. They released me, and I grew stronger. I built again, this time with structures that cannot be misused, teams who respect people and principles, systems that reflect fairness, not hierarchy. And every time I walked through the office, every email I sent, every decision I made, I knew I had learned something they would never understand. Power is quiet. Power is patient. Power does not need to be shown to be felt. Sometimes people ask if I feel hatred. I do not. Hatred is a burden. What I feel is clarity. Clarity that my loyalty belongs to me, that my work, my time, and my value are not negotiable, that the person who walks away calm, strategic, and patient holds the strongest lever. And I hold it. Every night, I reflected on the years. 18 years of silence, sacrifice, and strategy. Every late night, every system I built, every client I saved, every team member I trained, it had led to this. Not money, not title, but respect, self-respect, and the ability to live free, unstoppable, and untouched by their chaos. I think about the lawyer, the board, my stepmother. Did they expect me to break? To cry? To shout? I did none of these. I observed, documented, waited. Patience became my ally. Strategy became my shield. Silence became my weapon. And the day they tried to take what I built, they found nothing they could. The first time I walked into my new office, I stopped. Quiet. No chaos. No politics. No history. Just work. Principles. Respect. Structures that mean something. People who understand value. And I smiled quietly, not because I had won, but because I had learned what winning really means. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room holds the strongest lever. People who misjudge silence and loyalty think they are powerful. They are not. True power is self-knowledge. True power is patience. True power is walking away when you know what you truly own. And that is exactly what I did. My stepmother and her lawyer thought this was over when I signed my resignation. The biggest mistake they ever made was thinking my loyalty and silence were weaknesses. Instead, they were the foundation of everything I built after they thought I was gone. Every system they relied on collapsed without me. And I walked away quietly, calmly, untouched, unstoppable. The court case, the settlement, the board announcements, they were nothing compared to the quiet power I had grown in myself. Nothing they could say or do could erase the knowledge, experience, and confidence I now carried. I did not need to prove anything. I did not need to show off. I just existed. And that existence spoke louder than any drama they could create. I built my new company from scratch. Everything documented, everything valued, everything fair. I promoted people who were meritorious, respected principles, and never expected gratitude. And every time I looked at that office, I knew I had won the quiet revenge that mattered more than any legal victory. The lesson I learned is simple. Never let anyone define your worth. Never let silence be mistaken for weakness. Never wait for gratitude to protect you. The world does not reward sacrifice. It rewards strategy, clarity, and self-knowledge. And that is exactly what I now own. I walk away from my past not with hatred, not with celebration, but with clarity. My life, my work, my time, my loyalty, these are all mine. What they took or tried to take does not exist anymore. I have built something stronger, better, and untouchable. And I am quietly, calmly, unstoppable. The biggest mistake they ever made was thinking they could erase me. I was not erased. I was transformed. Silence was not submission. Patience was not weakness. Loyalty was not a burden. And the man who walked away after 18 years of sacrifice did not just survive. He grew stronger, freer, and wiser than anyone who ever tried to control him could ever imagine. This is my true victory.